My name is Natalie Lottering, but I just need to make sure whether you are able to hear me. So can everyone, maybe, I think everyone has left. Maybe one of you, A. Adams, can you please tell me whether you can hear me or and see me? Hello? Uh, Honest, yes, we can. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Fiwe, for that. I appreciate it. So you can actually hear me and you can see me. Okay, perfect. So I just thought I'll show you my face because it's important. I like students to see my body language as well. So yes, can I just yes, ma'am, you are visible and we can hear you. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Hey, Adams, sorry, students, some of you have just have your initial and surname. Some of you have Nomkosi, I can see your name. And some of you, Amy, I can see you. And Simnikiwe, I can see. And Susetu and Balengle. I can see all of your names, but unfortunately, I'm not seeing your faces yet. But please be ready. I might be asking you for your faces later on. I'm just going to quickly go to my slides and then we can start this lecture. So let me do my share. Okay, choose what you want to share. There we go. I want to go to Windows. And then I want to do the UNISA communication and then share. Okay, so all of you should be able to see this. Let me just go back. Okay, so I'm going to start the lecture. It's now, according to my phone, it's now 5:02. There's quite a few of you in line. So I'm going to start this lecture because I think it's important that we start getting going with the support services. Again, I'm just quickly going to do this. Let me just see. I'm not going to try and change anything for now. I just need to know, maybe if I go to escape, I just want someone to indicate that you can see the slides. You can see the slides. Onisiwe, can you see the slides? Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to go out of here again. Perfect. Thanks so much, students. I appreciate all your help. Okay, so I'm going to just start off because it's my first lecture with you for this year. And I thought the sooner we start, the better. Now, I'm going to tell you who I am. My name is Natalie Adams. Good grief. I got married last year and I'm still going through Adams and Lottering. So please excuse me. I will change that later on, but I'm supposed to be Natalie Lottering. And I am your academic literacy lecturer for this year, for the entire year. So we're going to just go through a bit of an introduction to tell you who I am. I have been in the academic field for the last 19 years, approximately, taught at about 4 different universities. And now I'm also busy as an academic literacy lecturer at the University of South Africa, UNISA. So I'm very excited to be working with you and doing this work with you because I think support academic literacy is almost like a support services. It's an additional service that we offer to assist students who might be struggling in terms in understanding the ENG1501 modules. So I'm not necessarily going to teach what's in your module. I teach additional support that you might need. Okay, so what I want you to know is that this is what I'm going to teach for this year, and that will be communication theory. I'm going to do a lot of that. I'm going to start with that today because I think it's so important that students understand where communication comes from. There's a theory that clearly states where it comes from, and that I want to discuss with you today. Then barriers to communication, barriers are breakdowns in communication. Communication is not always going to be fluent, where it's just going to be so beautiful and wonderful. I mean, if it was so beautiful and wonderful, we would never have disagreements. Okay, so we need to understand that there are going to be barriers to communication, and what are they? I'm going to look a little bit at language acquisition, especially for those who study English or even education. It's important that when you know how a language is acquired, okay? Then we're going to look at verbal and nonverbal codes. We're going to look at another area that I did with a few students 2 weeks ago. I did reading and note-taking skills, but I mostly did reading. It's almost like reading strategies that I go through. Things that you need to know, how to read a textbook, for example, how to read an article that has an academic text to it. You know, when you are asked to do academic writing, even those of you, I know that ENG1501, you are more literary work. So that would be your poems and novels, etc. So even with that, you know, it's important that you understand the reading skills. Listening is a very underrated skill. I don't think even teachers focus on it a lot in the schooling system. So I thought I'll bring in a little bit of listening skills, because a lot of us is do not, you know, you listen, but sometimes I don't know if you've ever heard people say, you're listening, you're hearing me, but you're not listening. I need you to listen. And I was earlier just on a Facebook page, and this guy was telling people, please listen, because they don't listen for the entire video. And I promise you, in the comment section, there were people that did not listen. So yeah, listening we will also do. I looked at meetings. Guys, meetings is so important, because I'm telling you now, whether you're going to become an English specialist, whether you're going to become a TEFL person teaching English, or you're going to go study further languages, or you're going to become a teacher or whatever, you are going to know how to conduct a meeting. And that's quite extensive. It's a lot of work. And I thought I'll include that just for you, so that you can be prepared when you have to deal with that one day. I'm also going to do oral communication with you. Oral communication will obviously be presentation skills, how to present in a classroom. I think it's a great skill to have. Then I think it's for the ENG1504. They are more business aligned students, so I will be doing a bit of business correspondence with them. But I also try and do it with you, because I think it's important that you also need that skill. We're also going to look at an online business presence. That's also one of the things that I'm going to focus on. And then I think the last one, there's employment communication. And then finally, we're going to look at, obviously I have to do academic writing with you, academic referencing. That I know that you are not necessarily I think the 1502 group, they are more busy with academic writing, but I'm also going to do it with you for this year, because you might need it in the future. So we'll do that. Oh my goodness, report writing, so important, guys. It's extremely important that you know how to write a report. I don't care whether you are an administrator, whether you are a mechanical engineer, whether you are a technician, you're all going to have to write reports. And there's a certain structure that goes with report writing that I will be doing with you. Then I'll also be doing learning styles, different types of learning styles. And then later on in the year, we'll do, or maybe I'll see how I can fit in everything, but I'll do a bit of exam preparations. Okay, so that's really what I'm here for. I'm just giving you an outline of what I intend doing for the year, because I think these are all the skills that one needs when looking at academic literacy. Okay, so Avron Beaumont is the person that I normally work with. He's part of the administrative staff, but also plays a bigger role. So he mentioned that sometimes I can have a one-on-one consultation with students. It says it's normally 30 minutes, but and then you must contact him. But he'll do some sort of introduction next week with you, so that he can explain how that entire process works. Unfortunately, he's on leave till tomorrow, so he couldn't stand in to speak about it today, but that's fine. I think we've got it organized. Okay. So what is going to be our objectives today? Let me just go back. Unfortunately, I just need to see. I can't see you along the side. So, okay. Anyone with questions so far, students? Are you all happy? Remember, this is for ENG1501. Okay? 1501. Additionally, students, what I also want that I've actually only realized now before I looked at the program. Let me just go back to my slides. There we go. Just give me a minute. Okay, before I go back into my slides, I just want you to know one thing. I think everyone sent to you an email with the specific dates that I will be seeing you. It's important for you to print those dates or to write it somewhere, because remember, there are different classes. I most probably see you most of the time on a Monday at this time from 5 to 7. But because there's so many holidays in April, you just need to be aware that there will be a Monday that I might not see you, but I might then decide to see you on a Tuesday. So I've given everyone my schedule from this week till I think the end of May. It's important that you look at that schedule and then follow the times, the dates and the times when I will be available. Okay. So we're all happy with that now. Let me just go back and see. Okay. Ooh, which one is it now? Let me just see this one. This one. Okay, there we go. So you all can see this so far. So what are going to be my objectives for today? Let's see. I want us to look at the following. Okay, after studying this chapter, you should be able to understand what is communication. I mean, as an English student, as an ENG 1501 student, it's clearly that you were interested in the English language. You wanted to study more about the English language. This always happens when I try, but let's just wait for this one. After studying this chapter, you should be able to understand what is communication, how children acquire language is very important. Describe the communication process with the aid of a model. Identify possible barriers to communication, and then identify different communication purposes. And then the last one would be understand. Oh, I'm going to have to go back because this thing is on, what's the say, name mode. Okay, I'm going to have to do this now, students. Are you all able to see it if I do it this way? Can I see just if someone raise a hand for me? Can you see if I do it this way? Where is it? Adams, can you see if I do it in the smaller column? Okay, perfect. Because I think I've got it on
Hi, Natalie. I've given you presenter rights. And Natalie, you are back. Your microphone is muted. Natalie, your microphone is muted. Natalie, can you hear me? But your microphone is muted. Just unmute yourself. Hi, students. Miss Adams has just left, or Mrs. Lottering has just left the session. She's having some technical difficulties. She'll be back in the next 10 seconds or so. So please be patient with us. I know her first lesson is about communication theory, and this is part of that. I will also be enabling the microphone for everybody. Please ensure that your microphone remains muted unless you are about to answer a question.
Hi, students. Technology will do this to you. Let me just go back to my share, to my slides, and then I can continue. Sorry about that.
Mrs. Lottering?
Yes.
Mrs. Lottering, I told him that this lesson is about communication theory. And what is this now? This is our barrier.
Yes, that's our barrier. That's what I'm trying to bring in. Okay.
So I'm going to leave, but I am available.
Okay, no problem. Thanks so much, everyone. I appreciate it. Take care.
No problem. Bye.
Okay, so I'm just gonna have. I mean, I've spoken to you about hi students. I'm back again. You know, these are. That's why I'm doing this communication theory with you and barriers to communication, because this computer system is a reality that I want you to be very aware of. And already you've seen what barriers to communication can do to you. Okay, so I've told you. So I said to you that the objectives for this semester is going to be the following. It's going to be, after studying this chapter, you should be able to understand what is communication, how children acquire a language. Then I'm going to look at describe the process with the aid of a model. So there's going to be a model that I'm going to speak to you about, and then I'm going to tell you how communication actually works. Okay, then we're going to look at identify possible barriers to communication. So what we experienced now was a typical barrier to communication, something we've never had before let's say 2019. I think it's after COVID that when COVID 2020 that we really started doing online classes like this. But before, it was face-to-face classes. And yes, we would have barriers to communication even in the classroom, because sometimes when you have your lecturer, a lecturer would do a PowerPoint slide and suddenly the equipment doesn't work. So yes, I've experienced these barriers even in a face-to-face classroom. But yes, online is also very challenging. So barriers mean breakdown to communication. I'm going to speak about communication purposes, identify different communication purposes. We're also going to look at understand how verbal and non-verbal communications are used to create meaning. We're also going to look at the relationship between verbal and non-verbal communication, and explain how non-verbal communication symbols are used to create meaning. And then lastly, explain the functions of non-verbal codes. So these are just a breakdown for your own. I don't believe, I have a lot of lecturers that says to me, can't I do reading skills or listening skills or academic writing skills with my students? And I always say to them, I cannot just start with those skills. I have to start with com theory first and barriers to communication, because that's the link that these are the two sessions where I speak about communication in general and what you need to know about it. Okay, so it's important for you to know how these things work. So let's go to the next slide. What do you think they are thinking? So this is communication, eh? Yeah, they say, I get it. I just want to see something if I do this, né? If it moves again. Okay. Okay, I think I'm going to open it. I can open the slides again, and then you'll be able to see better. So what do you think they are thinking? What do you think these people are thinking? I'm talking here, I get it. So one of you might be thinking, I get this. This is going to be about a communication class. Her name is Natalie Lottering. She is going to teach us about, let's say, about 10 modules. That's what you figured out so far. These modules will include communication theory. It will include barriers to communication. You're going to find academic writing here. You're going to look at report writing. You're going to look at references. So one of you might be thinking and summarizing it. Okay. Then another person would say, this is school. I hope so, guys. I hope so. It's very challenging teaching like this. My whole makeup as a lecturer is to actually see my students face to face, and it's very challenging for me not to see you. But yeah, that's why I always keep my camera on. You can see the background. I'm okay with that, but at least I feel you need to see my body language. So some of you might think, this is school. Somebody else might think, I can't wait to get started, and somebody, I'm learning so much. And this is what they actually thinking. This is what they actually thinking. It's chips. It's chips in the. There's chips in the canteen. So I'm talking, and then you thinking this. Was homework due today, or was I supposed to go pay something today? Then the next person would say, someone just texted me. And then easy growing a mustache. So with me, maybe you're looking at my body language and thinking about what. So when it comes to communication, there's two positions. There's what you think they are thinking and what they are actually thinking. And yeah, these online classes can really make you feel, I'm not sure what's happening on your side because there's no videos, there's no sound. So some of you might be busy cooking while you're listening to me. Some of you might be sitting in your bed, and that's okay, students, as long as you're comfortable and you are able to do this with me, okay? So yeah, this is the difference between whoever is doing most of the talking, the sound of my own voice. I wonder if my teacher gets tired of wah, wah, wah all day. Okay, so I'm sure that, I'm not sure whether you have a lot of these classes online. Maybe some of you can identify, maybe you can write in your chat, but I'm so scared to go to the chat again. So I hope that some of you are actually not feeling that I'm doing all the talking, the wah, wah, wah. And if I'm doing too much talking, please, guys, I have a thick skin. You can tell me and I will be okay with it, okay? I always say I'm never too old to learn. And if I'm not doing it the right way, students are allowed to let me know. You can tell me within the chat section or whatever, maybe personally if you want to. Okay, so there's a theory to communication. And what does the theory say? When we are born, we communicate with those around you. You communicate with those around you. Baby cries. If a baby cries, it communicates hunger or discomfort to the parent. I mean, babies do a lot of things, but when they cry, you know, they either hungry or their diaper needs to be changed, or they're not feeling well, their tummy might be aching. So all of these things. So there's still communication there. In other words, people communicate intuitively without ever studying communication. And that's true. I mean, how did you start learning your language? How did you were 2 years old and you could start saying a few words, 2 to 3 years. And how did that happen? You didn't sit in a lecture and then suddenly I can't teach a 2 to 3-year-old. It happens naturally. Okay. So in other words, people communicate intuitively without ever studying communication. When we study communication, we examine theoretically. So theory is a way of explaining and understanding the process that happens in the real world. So in other words, when we are going to look at theory, we are going to look at how, if you're looking at theory, it's almost like people have studied, these researchers or theorists, as we call them, have studied communication. And now there's a theory that makes sense. And that is what I'm trying to get at. There's this famous theorist called Stephen Krashen, and he says language acquisition does not require extensive use of conscious grammatical rules and does not require tedious drills. That's just a quote that I loved as an introduction, but I'll speak to you about that later on again. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about language acquisition. I think this is so important for English students so that they can understand how language is acquired. And this is not something that you would necessarily hear about in the schooling system. So I thought I'll bring this in. So there's a difference between learning a language and acquiring a language, and that is what we're going to look at. So this is going to be your week 1 outline. I'd say to you, I'm going to look at communication theory, but I also want to look at language acquisition. So this is what we're going to look at: language acquisition order. Number 2, we're going to look at what the behaviorist says. These are all theorists. We're going to look at innatism. That's also theory that we're going to look at. We're going to look at the interactionalism. And then we're also going to look at second language acquisition theories. These are just for your own knowledge. You know, it's not necessarily you're going to write a test about it, but it's just such fascinating work to understand how theories have, over the years, people will add certain theories and how they implemented it. Okay. And so the first theory I'm going to look at is the Larson-Freeman order of grammatical morpheme acquisition for English learners. So that's a mouthful, but really what it says is that Larson and Freeman, these are 2 theorists. So they believe that language acquisition, how a child acquires a language, it is about grammatical morpheme acquisition. You know, as English specialists, you are going to learn a lot about morphemes and about acquisition and so forth. So they said it's a grammatical morpheme acquisition, okay, for English language. So they're saying there, as a child studies a language, this is how they do it. Okay, so that in a natural setting, they say as a first language. So this is what they're saying: as a first language person, let's say your first language is English. This is how you're going to acquire it in a natural setting. You're firstly going to start by acquiring the ing. So the present, the reading, sitting, that is your continuous tenses. So that's the first tense a person, a young child will acquire. Okay, and then the second one would be your possessives. You know, the what do they call it? I need to use an men, but I mean, let's use an easier one. It will be seats, for example. Okay, so the possessive form of the word there. So if the possessive would be Natalie's classroom, okay, or Natalie's pen. Okay, so Natalie, that's the possessive. It belongs to me. So that is where you're going to have the apostrophe, and that's the second thing you are going to acquire as a child. The third thing that you are going to acquire would be the singular, okay, and the singular and the plural. Then in the classroom setting, this is what you are going to acquire first. You're firstly going to acquire the singular, then you are going to acquire the ing, and then you are going to acquire the possessives. So this is just to give you an idea of how a young child in a classroom setting, for example, in a natural setting where the child maybe is 2 to 3 years old, how they will acquire things firstly. But when it comes to the classroom setting where teachers actually in front of them, they will acquire certain language skills differently. It's not something that you're going to be tested on, but it's just something to know that there's a difference between a natural setting and obviously a classroom setting. Okay. So the use. So the first one is, as I've said, Larson Freeman's order of grammatical morpheme acquisition for learning, and that is how they believe a language gets acquired. Okay, now we're going to look at the more important one, I think, the behaviorist. So if you're going to study, maybe do an honors degree or a master's degree one day, you will find that you're going to have to deal with all these theorists. You know, theory is going to be your thing. If you're going to write a research paper, it's going to be important that you understand the theoretical part of whatever you intend studying one day. So this is what the behaviorist says, eh? So Larson Freeman says there's a grammatical structure, and the behaviorist says something different, okay? So the behaviorist says is that you are pouring knowledge into an empty head. This is how they believe young children acquire language. And how do they do that? So there's 4 categories. The behaviorist saying that this is how they do it, eh? They copy. So you say something. So the child would say, I am hungry. And you will say, I am hungry. And then the child will say, I am hungry. Then they practice it. Okay, so the child will then repeat that, I am hungry, I'm hungry. You, as the person listening to it, will give positive reinforcement. You will say, oh, wonderful. You know now how to say, I am hungry. And then you have to repeat that all the time. And this is how they believe children, that they actually formed after studying young children. They realize that this is how a child acquires language. They first copy what is being said. So you say something, then they repeat it. So you say, I am hungry, then the child will say, I am hungry. You practice it. Then you practice it the whole time. The child will repeat it the whole time. You will praise them, and that's the repeating will then become a habit formation. So it's almost like what you see here. It's a petrol tank, and then this person is opening up the child's brain and pouring, it's almost like pouring knowledge into an empty head. And that's how they believe a child acquires a language. Now, there's another one, Brooks and Lado. They also came up with a theory. They say that a child acquires a language by mimicking. So mimicry and memorization. So audiolingual teaching methods, they mimic you and they memorize what you are saying. And then they said use of language drills, repeating language structures to make them automatic and habitual. So what the behaviorists are saying, and what Brooks and Lando are saying is actually the same thing. They're saying mimicry would be copying, memorization, so practice, practice, practice. Language drills, where they have to repeating language structures to make them automatic and habitual. So yes, there are different theorists that came up with how do you acquire language, because it's quite fascinating if you think about it. Sometimes if you have children, you would think, but I don't teach this child this. How did they know how to say when the child is young, the only thing that you really want them to say is mama and dada, whatever language you are looking at. But really, how are you acquiring a language? It's fascinating. So the behaviorist continues. When you're looking at the behaviorists, they are saying, let me go back to the slide. They are saying that you must copy. The child must copy what you said. They must repeat what you've said. You must praise them, and then this will then become a habit, so repeating the sentences all the time. Even Brooks and Lado repeats the behaviorist perception. So, but what they are saying, this is the one problem. This does not explain how children are able to say things they have never heard, creating logical mistakes like, mice. Mices. Have you ever noticed if there's a young child, they wouldn't necessarily say, you get the mouse and then you get mice. But they, instead of saying mouse, they will say mices. Instead of saying held, they will say holded. Instead of saying swim, they will say swimmed. Instead of saying teeth, they will say tooths. Now, you must remember what the behaviorists are saying. They are saying that a child will copy what you say. They will repeat it. There will be reinforcement. So you will praise them, and then they will again repeat it. But what the other theorists were saying, if this is what the behaviorists are saying, then there's something wrong here. There's something missing, because how is it possible if a child can only understand the language by the copying and repeating and so forth, but yet the child then acquires language, stuff that they've never heard of before. In fact, they make mistakes, but the mistakes actually make sense, because when they say mices, we know they refer to a mouse. When they say hold it, we know that they're referring to holding. When they say swimmed, we know what they say, but how do they even make the mistake? So if we have to believe the behaviorists, it means that their theory doesn't add up. It's almost like there's something missing. And that is now where the problem comes in with the behaviorist, okay? So acquisition. So how do we look at it? We are born to use language. We are born to use language. And the third theorist is now the innatism. Remember, the first one was about let me just go back. The first one was Larson and Freeman, and Larson and Freeman just basically spoke about how they acquire certain language structures naturally and in a classroom session. But then we said about the behaviorists, how they copy, how they repeat, how they praise and repeating again, and so forth. And there's a lot of Brooks and Lado were big behaviorist theorists that believed in this and so forth. And then we coming to a point where we say, this doesn't make sense, because how does a child know how to even say the wrong words. So it means that what the behaviorists are saying doesn't make sense. So now we are going to look at the innatism and what they're saying, because the innatism is another group of theories, a group of theorists. Okay, so this is Chomsky, and Chomsky is going to be your friend, guys. When it comes to language, Chomsky is going to, he's the master of language. It's like Newton would be the theorist when it comes to Newton's theory of in physics. You know, Newton has his own theories. Now Chomsky is the master when it comes to language and language acquisition. So Chomsky in 1959 argues that behaviorism cannot provide sufficient explanation for children's language acquisition for the following reasons. Okay, children know more about language structure than they could learn. They know more about it. And even if it's like based on what they hear, they know more about it. And how do they know more about it? The behaviorists can't explain that. And the innatism says, no, the behaviorists are wrong. And so children are exposed to language that includes false starts. Sometimes they're exposed to language that includes false starts, incomplete sentences, yet they learn to distinguish between grammatically correct and incorrect sentences. So if the behaviorists are wrong for the following reasons, they say children are exposed to languages that include false starts. Sometimes, you know, the parent might be saying to a child something incorrectly, and yet the child knows how to correct themselves, you know, and they also go on to say, yet they can learn to distinguish between grammatically correct and incorrect sentences. And that is what they are saying there. So children are systematically corrected and instructed on language by parents, okay? So that can't be. So we're going to continue with the innatism. So the innatism says, okay, since the behaviorist theories have now does not make sense, we are going to try and look at another theory, that children are biologically programmed for language. This is what the innatism says, theorist says. They are biologically programmed for language. So within our DNA, we have a program. It's not like we learn languages the way the behaviorists are saying that you must copy and repeat, you know, and then praise and then repeat again. They said, no, we as children are biologically programmed for language. Language develops in the child the same way of other biological functions, okay? So, for example, here's a good example. Learning to speak is exactly how a child learns to walk. I mean, we're not, when a child, one day the child gets up and then everyone's excited because suddenly the child takes a few steps and they learn how to walk. We don't teach them, for example, how to crawl. They do that naturally. We don't teach them how to get up and start walking. They do that naturally. So the innatism are saying that learning to speak is exactly the same way you learn how to crawl. It's in the DNA of the person. You can't acquire language differently. So learning to speak, okay, is done exactly the same way as learning to walk, okay? So the language acquisition order. So here they say, again, language acquisition, that this is now what the native says. There's also, they first acquire the ing, then they will acquire the possessives, then they will acquire articles a and n, and then the third person, and so on. Please, students, I know that you are, I'm not familiar how good you are with language, but these are just the things that I have to just explain to you in terms of the theories. I'm not doing a language lesson here. I'm doing a lesson on communication theory. So they are saying this is how you acquire a first language and this is how you acquire a second language. This is not something you need to focus on. I just thought I will add it. Okay. So the innatists are saying that language gets acquired, you know, like there's a little box. It's like a box that you have when you are born. Okay, so language, the innatist says there's a language acquisition device, an LAD. That's a shortened word of it. So innate language ability is like a black box. So they're saying you are born with a black box, okay, containing universal grammar principles that apply to human language. And there's the box? It's empty. And as a child, when you get to 2 to 3 year olds, that box starts filling up. And that's how you acquire. It's very different from what the behaviorists are saying. So innate language ability is like a black box containing universal grammar and principles, okay? So language acquisition device, this is how it happens, okay? So when a child is about 3 months old, they start cooing and gurgling, okay? By 6 months, they start babbling, okay? By 12 months, you will hear first words. How did they get to do that? You wonder. By 18 months, the child knows 5 to 40 words. Those words might be mommy, daddy, mommy, mama, papa, whatever, a go-go, whatever. But they will know certain words, okay? By 2 years, a child will know 150 to 300 words, 2 to 3 word sentences. They actually will be able they will actually be able to say 2 to 3 word sentences. It will not be perfect, but they have that ability already. Then by year 3, they will have about 900 to 1,000 words. They will also be able to ask short questions, you know. And then by year 4, 2,000 words they will know. So 5+ word sentences. So they will be able to even form sentences with 5+ words in it. And then by 6 years, they will be able to identify letters, create longer sentences. So this is what the language acquisition device, the innatism says, with this language acquisition device, this black box, these children have within their DNA, they have the ability to acquire a language naturally. So just like the same way they learn how to walk, that's how they acquire a language. It's got nothing to do with what the behaviorists are saying. And when I look at what the innatism people are saying, it makes so much sense, because sometimes I'm so fascinated with the acquisition of how children acquire language. 5-year-old nephew was talking about, he's 5, and he was saying something about, you must stop having repetitional words when I speak. He was trying to correct me. Can you believe it? And I was thinking, where the hell did you hear the word repetition? You're like 5 years old, but do you know what I mean? I'm not sure if he ever heard the word repetition. Yes, he might have heard the word repetition, but how does he know to put that in a sentence so that it actually makes sense to me? I said to him, wow, you are another one to tell me to stop doing repetition. And I said to him, the reason why I'm doing repetition sometimes, it's because sometimes people need to hear something 3 times, and especially online education. So if I repeat myself often, students, it's because I need to make sure that you understand what I'm saying. I'm not the type of lecturer that's just going to speak on what is written on the slides. I like bringing in examples of things as well. So evidence to support innatism: virtually all children successfully learn their mother tongue at a time in their life when they would not be expected to learn something else so complicated, i.e. it's biologically programmed. So we all successfully learn. If you are growing up in an isiXhosa household, you will notice by the age of 2 or 3, the children, they've picked up the mother tongue successfully in all environments. And so sometimes it's complicated. It's complicated things, but as we've seen now, the innatists are saying that it's biologically programmed to do so. Okay, so there's now how universal grammar works. Okay, so in second language acquisition, it works a bit differently. I'm not going to go into details with this because it's not applicable to you. So I'm going to look at, I'm going to do it with the other group, okay? I didn't want to lose it. Now, we have, firstly, we had, the first one was the grammar structure. Then the second one was the behaviorist. The third one was the innatism. So okay, let me put it to you this way. Forget about the first one because it doesn't say much. I want us to focus on the behaviorist. I want us to focus on innatism. And I now want us to focus on internationalism. And what does it mean? So internationalist says that believes children learn their first language through a combination of innatism. So they are saying exactly the same thing as the innatists. They are saying that we acquire the language via innatism. So in other words, there's a black box. That black box is it's open, and whatever the child hears at a certain age, that goes automatically into the child's mind, and that is how they develop a language. Okay, so the interactionalism says exactly the same thing as the innatism. It's exactly the same, but they just have an additional thing. They say believe children learn their first language through a combination of innatism. So there's a black box and environmental factors. And what do we mean with it? Child's inborn capacity to develop language is crucial, and a language a child hears from adults in their world. Okay, so what do we mean with environment? So I'm sure you have seen a lot of times if a child is 2 or 3 years old and they go to live, their parents move to China, and so they will, their first language, yes, they still have the black box, they still have the innatism theories box, but the environment, there's also environmental factors. So if you are a child that goes to China and suddenly is in that environment, the child will then learn, for example, Mandarin, which is the Chinese language, due to the environmental factors that also plays a role. So they are just adding that, look here, the interactionalism, the interactionalist theorists are just adding, they say we believe in innatism, we believe in the language acquisition box, we believe that children acquire language just like they learn to walk, but we must also take the environmental factors into consideration, okay? And that means a child's inborn capacity to develop language is crucial, and language a child hears from adults in his or her world. So if the adult speaks mostly in your environment, isiXhosa, or they learn Zulu, that means that child will develop that first language from what they hear. And that is the environment that plays an important factor there, okay? Okay, so by the time of primary education, learners have already acquired their first language, but most acquire a second or third additional language at school. So when a child reaches primary school, some of them have gone through pre-primary or creche that we normally call it, and they have acquired their first language fairly well, but most encounter a second or third additional language at school. Now, obviously, if they encounter a second language or third language, or even you yourself, when you think about the second or third language you took at the schooling system, you know, that is something that needs to be taught, because the first language, like the native says, it comes naturally, but the second and the third language obviously requires teaching, because that doesn't come naturally to you. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so I thought the second language acquisition theories, I'm not going to do with this group specifically. I'm just fearful of losing the slides. So yeah, so I'm going to move on. Students, let me just go out of here and make sure that you are all, any questions so far, students? Let me just check a few names. Amy, are you fine? Are you Amy? The new Amy. Your mic has been disabled. Okay, Fiwe, you have your hand up. Fiwe, you have your hand up. Do you have a question for me? Amy, your hand's up. Do you have a question? Guys, can you hear me? Oh my goodness. Students, you have to unmute yourself. Let me read the comments here. Amy, same on my side. Yes, ma'am. It's just the slides weren't moving on my side. Okay. 1758. Okay, Amy, same as on my side. The slides are not moving on my side. I've also noticed that. Are the slides not moving, students? But now, how the hell? Amy? Yes, is that what you are saying? Are the slides not moving? Goodness me. Yes, you can hear me? Okay. Let me just go back and then see what's going on here. Unisa. This is the problem with not being connected to the system. Yeah, this is the slides. Students, can you hear me now? Communication theory. Just go on here. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It only moved now to communication theory. Oh my goodness. Okay. What I will do, I will email the slides to you. Okay. Oh my goodness. How did you miss the others? Just see which one. Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute, students. Can you see this slide on communication? Okay, so there we go. Communication theory. Oh, goodness me. Just give me a minute, students. It's because there are two desktop one. Okay, so let me just go there. Let me just go to the students. Oh no, did this thing now go out? Students? Yes, ma'am. We can see the communication theory slide. Okay, let me now do that. So you can see that slide at least. Okay. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, students. I was really under the impression that you were saying that you could see all the slides. So you can see this slide now. Oh my, why? Can you believe this? Okay, let's just go. So can you see this, the communication theory one? Okay, so I'm going to continue now and then take it from there. So communication theory, this is, remember I said to you, I was first going to tell you about how students acquire a language, okay? So the acquisition of language happens, I mean, I'm not going to mention the first one again, but I'm just going to make a summary of it. It happens 3 ways. The first one is the behaviorist. And I said to you that the behaviorist copy, repeat, then you give positive reinforcement, and then you repeat again. And then that was then told by the innatism, the theorists, innatism, nope, that's not how we acquire language. We do it via a language acquisition device. There's a black box, and just like a child learns how to walk, that is how they acquire a language. Okay, so the innatism says exactly that's why a child is at 8 months, a child is already busy cooing. At 2 years, a child is already can say a few words. At 5 years, a child can say at least 1,000 words, and so forth. Okay, so then the innatism mentioned that theory, which I agree with. Then interactionalism, that's the last theory. They saying, yes, we agree with the innatism, but we also saying that we must take the environment into consideration. And the environment means how the child was, where the child was born, because automatically, yes, the child acquires the language naturally, but also depending on the environment, who's there, what language are being spoken, etc., etc. So those are the things that's important that you need to remember. I'll send the slides, I'll remove certain things, but yeah, those are the basics. Okay, so can you guys see communication theory? Can you see that? Oh, I have to now go back because just to make sure. Okay, so you guys, yes ma'am, yes ma'am. Okay, perfect. I'll go in and out more often to see what's going on. So let me just make sure. So again, as I've said, other words, when we are born, we communicate. You communicate with those around you. Baby's cries in order to communicate hunger or discomfort. Remember, I express that to you. Okay. In other words, people communicate intuitively without ever studying communication. That much you know now. And the theories have explained it to you. When we study communication, we examine theoretically. Okay, so theory is being studied theoretically. So theory is a way of explaining and understanding a process that happens in the real world. So the first part was all about language acquisition, how we acquire a language. This part is how we communicate with each other. So this is also part of communication theory specifically. So within communication theory, there's this thing, there has to be, I am the sender of the message today, isn't it so? I'm the sender, you are my audience, isn't that so? Okay, but obviously I am relating a message. What is my message today? There's an audience, there's feedback, etc. So we're going to look at what the model says. Okay, so what does the model say? The model says, how does the model of interpersonal communication work? So this is the model of interpersonal communication. There's a sender, there's a message, there's an audience, there's feedback. I'm going to add here, there are codes. There are codes, verbal and nonverbal codes. There are different things that can be added to the model of interpersonal communication. I'm just going to do the basics with you because I want you to see them. Okay, how does the model of interpersonal communication work? So this is how it works. For example, in practice, as sender, I'm the sender. Let me first do my example. As a sender, Natalie might receive a message in English using face-to-face as a medium. So Natalie is the sender. Okay, who's my audience here today? And you need to be very specific. Who would be my audience here today? Can somebody tell me who's my audience here today? Who's my audience? And you must be very specific with my audience, because remember, I'm teaching ENG1501. I'm teaching ENG1502. Ask the students. So you see, ask the students is not clear enough. Your audience must always, in communication theory, it says that your audience must be very clear. Because as a student, how many students does UNISA have? I think, hi guys, it's like 260,000. Yes, I like this. Unam, Toba, ENG15, Nomkosi, you are right. I'm teaching ENG1501 students. I'm very specific with my audience, because if you can imagine, I've got other classes that I'm teaching, but if I'm confusing them with you, it means that I don't understand my audience, okay? The same principles is going to apply one day, students, when you have to submit an assignment. Thanks, Adams, as well, for giving me the correct answer. The same principles will apply when you send in your assignment one day, your first assignment, okay? And I think your first, I couldn't see if it's going to be an assignment on poems or on novels. Unfortunately, I do not have access to my UNISA page, but let's say it is, your audience is going to be who? Your audience is going to be you. Now, if you write your assignment, who's going to be the sender? If you write an assignment, who's the sender of that assignment? Us, the ENG 150. So your sender is ENG 1501. Am I correct there? Okay. That sender's ENG. Yes. Okay. So who's going to be your audience with your first assignment? Who's going to be your audience with your first assignment? Who's my audience here today? I'm the sender. I'm Natalie Lottering. So Natalie Lottering is the sender here today. Okay. But if you do an assignment, you are going to be the sender. Isn't that so? Who's going to be your audience? Isn't that going to be there we go. Beautiful, beautiful. So that Nomkosi, that's going to be the lecturer. Okay. The lecturer is going to be your, so Nomkosi's got it right. It's going to be the lecturer. Okay. So let's go further. Now, how do you think I'm conveying my message here today? How am I doing it? So the audience will be your lecturer. Sorry, doing nonsense here. The audience will be the lecturer. Okay. Please type, audience will be the lecturer. Now, if look here at my session today, now, the sender here is Natalie. Isn't that so? Okay, Natalie. I'm still using Adams Lottering. Who's my audience? My audience is, what do they call it? Or maybe I must go and do it on my slides. Actually, it might be a bit easier to do it on the actual slides. Okay, so I'm going to open up a slide here. After this, I'm going to open up a new slide. Okay, so I'm going to open up a slide and I'm going to say to myself, can you see the slide, students? Unmute yourself and then just say yes, because I can't go back and forth. Anyone can unmute themselves, guys. We're not seeing your faces. So like, my goodness. Can somebody just unmute themselves and say yes? Can you unmute yourself? Oh my goodness. Why is everyone so quiet? I said, I'm disabled. Why are the mics disabled? Let me see. Allow mic. Camera. Okay, let me just see if I can't do it this way with more meeting info settings. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay, students, I am now, I have to do it. Everyone's mic and what's his name? I will have to now disable it. So individually, which will take forever. I need to actually first enable our mics, then we close and open them on our sides. I can't, I have to do it individually. Let me just give me a minute for a minute, eh? Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute. There we go. Yeah, I've just now discovered that the administrator was supposed to unmute all of you. I can't do it on my side. I've tried everything up here, but he's not available, unfortunately, tonight. So I've unmuted Samson. So Samson and Amy, and then Nondomiso in the Nondomiso. I couldn't because it's just too many students. I'm unable to do that. So Samson, you will have to respond. Unmute yourself. Is that possible, Samson? And then Amy? We also see somebody else. We just try. Oh, this is. You must be able our mics and close and open them out on our side. Oh my goodness, I can't do it. I've just asked my husband, and he's an IT specialist. He said the administrator will have to do that. So yeah, no, it won't work. But anyway, let me go back to the slides. Then we'll just have to talk via the chat section. Okay. So if you look at it now, I am the sender of the message here today, sender. So the sender will be Natalie Lottering. Okay, who's my audience? My audience is very clear. It is audience is ENG1501. Okay, so we now know how this thing of sender and audience works. Okay, you can also call your audience the receiver of the message. Okay, so I'm just going to put receiver in between brackets there. Okay, the receiver of the message. Then we are going to go further. So I'm just going to say to you that then I'm just going to talk about, so the sender is the initiator of the communication. So when we say initiator of communication, students, it means every form of communication. Okay, if you are sending a message to your friend, that you are the sender, you are the initiator of the communication. The audience will be the person that's actually receiving the message. Okay, so the receiver of the message will be your audience. Then the message, the subject matter. What is the subject matter of what am I teaching you today? I'm telling you that who I am. My name is Natalie Lottering. I'm the academic literacy lecturer. I started teaching you about language acquisition and how that works. And then I'm now doing communication theory with you. What medium am I using to convey the message? So medium means what criteria am I using to convey the message? Some people use spoken criteria. Some people does written criteria. In my case, so the message will be, the medium will be either be spoken or written, okay? So in this case, you will have a letter that you can send. I mean, more modern mediums would be what? It will be email. So we have email there. It will be blogs, you know, blogs. It will be Instagram, where you also make comments. Okay, so written mediums are basically, written mediums would be a blog, written, email, a blog, a tweet would also be written. Then obviously you're going to get your spoken medium. Spoken will be, like in my case now, I am teaching you, okay, and you can hear my voice. It's something where you hear the voice of the person, or it could be a WhatsApp, a voice note on a WhatsApp message. That's also spoken, voice note of a WhatsApp message. Okay. So there are various, if you are in a meeting, for example, and you listen to the meeting. So a meeting is also a spoken medium, also a written medium, okay? So meetings, because in a meeting, there's a lot of spoken things, but there are also a lot of written. So the medium there will be spoken and written. So again, up there, you will have meetings, etc. So spoken, the medium that you are using, it depends. It depends. And you must be very careful with medium, because sometimes when we look at a lot of failures in getting messages across is because people don't use the correct medium. I mean, ideally, the correct medium for me would have been more face-to-face interaction where I can actually see you. But in this case, it is online where you see my face, because I have not deactivated my video cam, and you can hear my voice. Do you understand? So the medium that I'm using here today will be spoken medium. Okay, because you can hear my voice, and you can also see my body language, okay? Language, okay? But it's also written because I am using PowerPoint slides. It's also written because I'm using PowerPoint slides, okay? And I'm also typing PowerPoint slides because I'm also typing, as you can see, okay? So these are your mediums. So there's three things that you need to know already. There's an audience, there's a sender, there's a audience, which is also your receiver, but there's also a medium when it comes to communication theory. Okay, there's a medium, and the medium is either going to be spoken medium or it's going to be written medium. Okay, so that's fine. Let's go on. Wow. Here we go. Yes, ma'am, the microphones are disabled. Any other guys? Can you give me a thumbs up to see that you can see the slides and that you can hear me? A thumbs up? Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. The students, perfect. Okay, thank you so much. So I can then continue. Okay, so your medium will be the written medium. The medium here will be, I'm going to highlight it. The three things that you need to remember so far is going to be your sender, your audience, or receiver. And then the medium is either going to be spoken or written. So I have PowerPoint slides. I am writing on the slides as I am teaching you. Can you see there? Okay. So there's three things that we figured out already, okay? There's a sender, an audience, a medium, and your mediums will either be spoken or it will be written, depending on what you are going to do for your assignment, or written, okay? There we go. Then there's also something that they call codes, okay? So a codes will be either verbal or it will be verbal, or it will be nonverbal, or nonverbal. I have these things on the slide somewhere, students, but when I start typing, I feel like I'm in a classroom typing on a board. So yeah, it makes me happy to do it this way. So it's verbal, non-verbal. So verbal, students, code is also something that we have to use in communication because it also helps with your message getting through. Ultimately, when it comes to communication, I'm going to do this later on, we want positive feedback. We want positive feedback. Okay, so I want you to understand what I am saying here today. So I want positive feedback. And how do I get positive feedback? I get positive feedback when I can say, okay, you understood what I was speaking about here. So what is the codes? A verbal code is anything that is written, okay? So written would be anything, a verbal code is anything that's written, okay? So let's say anything that is written. So if you, for example, get a WhatsApp message, okay, and there are words in the WhatsApp message, that automatically means that the codes are verbal. But if you see a picture in the WhatsApp message, it means that the codes would be verbal and it will be nonverbal. So picture, a little icon, you know, those little things that we have, the love sign, anything that interprets words will be nonverbal. Okay, so anything that interprets, like the heart will be, we know that if somebody sends you a heart, it means love. Okay, if you send someone a broken heart, and it means something different. But a code is anything that's written. So the codes will be verbal and the codes, or it will be nonverbal. Okay, so anything that's written and then nonverbal. Then you are going to also have something called context. Okay, so in what context is the message happening? Am I speaking to myself? Okay, so I have an audience of 22 people. So the context for this would actually be more, because you are all scattered in different parts of the Eastern Cape, the context would be mass communication. But I'll tell you the other contexts as well. And then what do I want from after doing all of this? I want to have positive feedback from my audience. In other words, if I ask you about what have I taught you today, you will be able to give me positive feedback. That's what communication theory says. It says that you need to know who is the sender of the message. You need to know your audience. This is the person that's responsible for the message is the sender. Guys, don't tell me, I send a message and this audience just simply doesn't understand me. It means that I have done something wrong. Do you understand that, students? It means that I have done something wrong. So I will have to then reconsider my message again. The sender is the most important part. The audience, my audience today is ENG1501. Okay? I am responsible for making sure that you get the message here today. Yes, we're going to talk about barriers to communication later on, but it's my responsibility to make sure that you are doing that my audience understands me. What medium am I using here today? You can hear and see me. So I'm using spoken medium and I'm using written medium. Okay, so hear my voice. See, you can hear my voice. You can see my body language. The written part is that I'm using PowerPoint slides. I'm writing on the slides as I'm teaching. So I'm using both. You know, sometimes, have you ever seen an ad where you just see a car? You understand? You see a car and then there's crosses next to the car. What is that? Is that a written medium, or was it a spoken medium? It will be, you know what I mean, you know, so there's no words there. You just see a car and then there is like crosses, you know, like when people pass away. It means that there's no need for a written message, because once you see the picture, you will know that this is about, if you cause an accident, people are going to die. You understand that. There's no need to write anything. People see this message and they immediately know what it says. So the codes will be also verbal codes. Are you using verbal codes? Are you using words in your message, or are you just using an interpretation, non-verbal codes? In our case, again, if you see just a car that's rolled over and you see crosses, it means that the person has used a non-verbal code. But if the person writes there in the message, accident causes death, it becomes then a verbal code, because there's words written, and it also becomes a non-verbal code because there are pictures. So the codes would be verbal and non-verbal. The context there are different contexts, and we're going to look at that a little bit more. Okay. So how does the model of interpersonal communication work? So I just use an example. For example, in practice, as a sender, Bongi might receive a message in English using face-to-face as a medium. So face-to-face is the medium. Remember, the face-to-face can either be written or it could be spoken, but face-to-face would be the medium. Hi, Bolalwa, could I borrow your communication textbook just for today? Her audience, Bolalwa, decodes the message and as a request to borrow a book and gives feedback by responding, sure, but I must have it back by 5 p.m. The context will be interpersonal. So here we have a situation where Bongi is the sender. She's asking for a textbook. Bolalwa is the audience. Bongi, the message is sent face-to-face. So the medium that they are using is face-to-face communication. And then there's obviously the feedback that Bongi is that Bolalwa is expecting is that the book must be given back to her by 5 p.m. Okay, so that's really what the model of interpersonal communication means. I'm going to go further into it because I want you to understand it better. So I've used a few other examples as well. So elements, written medium, there we said lecture, voice note, no, voice notes. Voice notes would not be written, that would be spoken. Face-to-face will be also spoken. Meetings, but that will be the actual meeting that you are attending, not the, this will be sorry guys, I'm confusing you. Okay, so lecture would be written is the PowerPoint slides. Okay. Okay, meetings would be the agenda that you are going to get. This would be the minutes of the meeting that you are going to get. So all of this is written of meeting. Zoom will be, and Teams online sessions. So these would be the PowerPoint slides that you are going to get. Okay, and it will also maybe be your any form of written communication you might get from the administrator tomorrow. Okay, so emails from administrator, that would be your written emails from administrator. Okay, now can you see there an interview, and that would be the questions you might get on paper. Questions you might get on paper. There we go. So it's all written. Now, if we're going to look at lecture, what will be the spoken form? So this is the written. So let's do spoken. So spoken would be the way I'm speaking now. Is that clear? Okay, so you see my words coming out of my mouth in a lecture, words coming. So in other words, okay, let me put it this way, speaking. Okay, speaking. There we go. Ooh. Speaking. My spelling. Speaking, when meetings agenda minutes is written, what will be spoken? Spoken would be the actual meeting when they, the chairperson comes in and they speak about the meeting. Is that clear? Okay, so that would be what is said in the meeting. So that would be a spoken meeting in the meeting. So when it comes to your Zoom and Teams online sessions, so now the spoken would be the recording you are going to get, recording of this Teams meeting. So that would be spoken Teams meeting. And then the last one would be interview, will be actually the questions what you are going to, questions you might get on paper. In an interview, it will be questions that you need to answer directly. Okay, so this is still communication theory, okay, that you answer directly. So that's wonderful. So it's just an example of telling you what is written and what is spoken. Okay, so you can have sometimes a medium that's just spoken, then you can get one that's just written. It depends on you. Okay, so then we're going to look at codes. I explained to you that codes will be verbal and non-verbal. Again, their verbal will be words that you will see, and then the non-verbal will actually be the word, there's no words that you see. Then feedback is going to be the audiences. Remember, the sender is important. The sender is the person that sends the message. So the feedback is going to be the audience's response to the message. Okay, examples of feedbacks are nods of agreement. You know, when you look at your students, especially in a face-to-face class, you will see they are agreeing with you. In this case, I would, because I like interaction, and I'm really sorry about the deactivation of the buttons. As I've said, I cannot. I tried now to unmute all of you. I do not have the rights as the administrator to do so. I tried doing it earlier as I was talking to you, but it seems to be a no-go. No, I don't have any rights. Nothing. Okay. But the microphones are disabled. Okay, so one non-verbal and then communication, ma'am. Okay, perfect. Let's go back. And so the codes would be, so the feedback is what you're going to get, hey? So normally in the classroom situation, my feedback would be, okay, I'm going to look at the students and I will see whether they are nodding, you know, or after I've done this communication theory with them and I give them a test and then they get good marks. And that means that, oh my goodness, my audience understood what I said. Okay, so that's very important. The context would be the situation in which the communication takes place, and I'm going to do that with you a little bit later on. I just want us to use the examples of verbal and nonverbal codes. So nonverbal codes are these things, you know, there's a picture. Stop will actually be a verbal code because that's the word written there. Can you see the word stop? But if you see that sign, the sign in red, you will normally know it is a stop sign. So that message here, the man with a picture, is a verbal code and it's a nonverbal code because it has words written in here. But this guy here obviously is just nonverbal. This is nonverbal. And you know, you can obviously, it's nonverbal, but you can see there's a woman smiling. You understand that? And there's a guy standing behind her that's quite serious. So nonverbal codes without even saying anything, you can, it's communication, you know. So essentially even a picture is communication. Then here we have at the bottom, we have the guys clapping hands, and most of them are very happy, etc., etc. You can form an opinion of that they are communicating that whatever function they are at, they are quite happy with it. So there we go. Okay, so codes you understand now. Communication context, that's the only thing I haven't mentioned because so far I've mentioned sender. When it comes to communication theory, you need to know that there must be a sender. There must be a specific audience. So in my case, the sender would be Natalie Lottering. The audience will be ENG1501. The message here is very clear. The message is going to be verbal and non-verbal. Sorry, the message is going to be a written and it's going to be a spoken message. The written message is what you see on the PowerPoint slides, etc., etc. And then the spoken is what you hear. So the medium that I'm using is what you hear. Then I am saying to you that there are codes. The codes will be verbal and non-verbal. Verbal is my voice that you're hearing. Non-verbal would be the my body language and whatever else there is. And ultimately, from everything that I've done here, I want positive feedback. Okay? So, but I must also take one thing into consideration. In which context is the communication taking place? Is it in an intrapersonal context? So intrapersonal, guys, is when you speak to yourself. There's nothing wrong with speaking to yourself. You still have a context. So communication doesn't take place in isolation. There's always going to be a context. And in most cases, when you speak to yourself, so sometimes I would say to myself, Natalie, oh, you know what? The ENG1501 students, I'm quite impressed with how many students actually logged in. I would be thinking it to myself and I would say, you haven't done so badly, especially since they sent the message out only a few hours ago. Okay, so that would be intrapersonal. Now, interpersonal is when you're communicating with two people, maybe even your friends. So that's the context. Then small group communication is normally when you have like a meeting set up, but there's about 3 to 12 people in that meeting. And then, so this is the last two, public communication. So that would be, so the first one is inter, the second one is the first one is intra. So intra will always be one. So that will be the one person talking to themselves. Inter will be two people speaking to themselves. Number 3 is public communication. And that refers to public speaking. And it occurs in the public rather than the private places, even though both send and audience are present. When public communication takes place, it is largely just a one-way communication and is formal in nature. Examples are a formal lecture and speech made at a political rally. So public communication is when it's what I'm doing here, which I don't like because I would love it to be two-way communication. But this is public. It's me speaking and there's an audience. Sometimes when you go to a political rally or a big rally, you normally have one person speaking and then there's an audience. Or sometimes even when you go to church or to mosque or to wherever, depending on your religion, there might be public communication where all of you are in one space, but there's one person speaking, etc. I'm sure all of you have heard of the next one, which is mass communication. So the context is mass. That refers to the transmission of a message to a mass audience. In the past, this was a one-way communication. However, the advent of social media such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, SMS, and emails has led to increasing feedback opportunities. So mass communication would have been the advertisements, you know, where you find that let's say someone is advertising, what do they advertise? Maybe they're advertising, I can't now think of washing powder, okay, washing powder. So, you know, you have different washing powders. So they're advertising MAC washing powder. I mean, I'm not sure if you know MAC, or they're advertising Omo, which most of you might know. So that goes out to a mass audience and they all see it, and ultimately the people from Omo, the company, will be so happy after you've seen that advertisement. You're going to go out there as the audience and you're going to buy Omo washing powder. You understand that? So if you don't follow this process, students, you're going to sit with a problem. Because if you don't understand that you are the sender is the person that must get it right. So if you submit an assignment, for example, you are the sender of the assignment. Do you understand that? The message of your assignment is going to be what? The message is going to be that you need to do an assignment on a poem or on a novel. You must be able to answer the questions properly. The medium that you are going to use most probably is going to be a written medium. So it might be the assignment that you're going to write on paper, or you're going to type it out and then you're going to submit it. If it's a poem that must be read to someone, to people, then it will be the medium will be spoken medium. So depending on what is expected from you as a sender, okay, the sender is the one that must take responsibility. So your message will be, I need to answer the questions on this assignment. The assignment is given to you on my UNISA. The medium, depending on what they expect from you, will be written medium, or it can be spoken if you are expected to upload a video onto YouTube or whatever. It depends. The codes that you are going to use is going to be verbal and non-verbal codes. Again, if it's verbal codes, it means that you're just going to use the written language. If it's non-verbal codes, it's also going to be, again, you must upload something, and then people are going to, I'm confusing you. The codes will be verbal codes. Verbal codes will be the written, anything that's written. Non-verbal is maybe a picture that you're going to add with your novel, or with your short story, or with your poetry, etc., etc. Okay, so remember, codes will be so it will be verbal codes and it will be non-verbal codes. Your verbal codes will always be written. Your non-verbal codes will always be pictures, etc., etc. Then the last one that you must also take into consideration, what is going to be my context? Is my context intrapersonal? So it's something that I'm going to do by myself. You know, I'm going to talk to myself. Some guys, even when you have to do oral communication, I always say to my students, go stand in front of a big mirror and you start practicing your oral communication. That is intrapersonal communication, because you are talking to yourself. Interpersonal communication is when there's two people. I normally say a small group communication is when you are 3 to 12 people, and then the fourth one is public communication. And I said that can be quite a big group of people, but it's in one space. Okay, so I say to you, maybe it's a face-to-face lecture that you are doing. There could be 200 students in that venue, and I'm the one standing in front and I'm talking. It could be a rally that you attend, a political rally that you attend, where the person stands in front and then the person then the speaker, then there's a big audience, but they're all in one space. And the last one is mass communication, which is your popular one. That's normally when people want to sell something, you know, it's about selling a product, and it needs to go to a lot of people. I've just mentioned to you, now these people sit in different places, in different provinces. They see it on TV, they see it on radio, etc., etc. But also what is lovely about mass communication nowadays, especially with the advent of social media, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, SMSs, and so forth, Instagram, it is very important that now people can communicate via mass communication as well, and so forth. So you have now the elements of communication theory, okay? And these elements entails that sender, receiver, message, medium, codes, and context, and then finally your audience. I'll write it up for you before we leave, okay? So the important, I just added this, the important speaking communication skills. I thought this was very important because I'm going to do it with you again. Practice speaking in front of others. You need to practice to speak in front of others. You need to have less text and more visuals. I don't know if you've noticed with my PowerPoint slides, I don't use a lot of text, but I have quite a few visuals in my text, okay? Your text is just there to guide you. Your visuals are more important. And research has shown that students tend to remember 70% more of the work that you've taught them if they actually see the visuals within your PowerPoint slides. Okay, leverage your personality, be passionate and engaging, guys. When you speak, if you don't have a personality, it's going to be very difficult for you. I always say the world does not take kindly to quiet people. Yes, I know there's a place for introverts, and I love, I'm definitely not an introvert, I'm an extrovert, but I love with people that are introverts. And yes, I always try to ask a lot of questions, but I've come to realize that my husband is becoming a bit of an extrovert now because of our communication that we have. But I also respect the fact that sometimes he needs his quiet time, and that's also okay. But you need to leverage your personality. Be passionate and engaging. Look at people that are passionate and engaging. I mean, one of my favorite people that I always listen to is Barack Obama. That man can make a speech like no other. He just has the ability to speak so into your soul almost. And so forth. Maintain eye contact with audience. I mean, at the moment, students, I can't see you. I am loving, I'm speaking to the blind virtually, but I'm praying that by you being able to see me, it does help. Okay, so, but if you are in a face-to-face contact situation, you must maintain eye contact with your audience. It is utterly important. Focus on on confident body language. Yes, people smile. Life, I smile a lot when I teach, because I don't know what you are going through in your life. So your audience might also be going through things. So be friendly. Just smile sometimes. I mean, don't smile now when you do an obituary for someone that's passed away or so forth, but smile. Be friendly. Hand gestures. I use a lot of hand gestures. I speak with my hands, but I'm not all over the place with my hands, but I do love using my hands and so forth. Okay, so this is body language that you must take into consideration. Voice projection. Yes, speak, project your voice. Some people a woman tend to have a very squeaky voice, so we speak very high. And then men have that male voice that sound the same. I am a happy person, Ms. Natalie. I love my life. And you're not going, when you speak, guys, you have to go a little bit up and down, to attract people. If you don't do that, you're just going to lose people. Pace is also important. Don't speak too fast. Please don't speak too fast, or don't speak too slowly, because people who speak slow, there's always that uncomfortable silences in between. So pace yourself. In other words, don't speak too fast or don't speak too slow. Just pace yourself so that your audience can hear you. Remember, people, that communication theory says it's not about the sender. It's not, as I'm teaching here, it's not about me. It's all about my audience. You are this is important for me that you understand what I'm saying, okay? Posture, have a good posture, stand up straight. Unfortunately, it's difficult because I'm not in a classroom setup. I would have stood in front of a lecture room, and I would have been able to, you would have been able to see my body, okay, you can see my smile, and you can see maybe my hand gestures. But yeah, eye contact, you can't see. You can hear my voice projection. You can hear my pace, my posture, because I'm sitting on a stool here. And actually, it's an ottoman that I'm sitting on. And yeah, so my posture is the way it is. Okay. Welcome questions and comments, and keep it short. Okay. So let's go further. Then here's an activity. Oh, but now the problem is with this activity is because you are, this is really a problem. Yeah, I tried Video. Yeah, I can't see the, I'm trying to get the audio settings. No, I can't do anything here. I have, and everyone is not in the classroom, so I won't be able to do this with you. But maybe you can type this for me in the chat. Okay. So the question would be, what is the, let me just go back to my slides. Activities. Should the sender or the audience take primary responsibility for the success of any communication? Is it the sender's responsibility or is it the audience's responsibility? Can someone maybe respond there? Is it the sender's responsibility or the audience's responsibility? Anyone can type in the comment section. Is it this? Can't we do the, no, it's too late. Adams? Hi, Adams. Because I do not have any access to taking you into rooms or whatever, it's difficult. You understand that, so I can't do it. But you can type out the answers as I'm given it to you, because it's really just one word answers. Can't we do the activity? I understand. Okay, so thank you so much, Adams. The sender's responsibility. Beautiful. Thank you. So you've answered the first question already. It's the sender's responsibility. Then the next question, why is it important to consider the needs of the audience before conveying a message? Why is it important to consider the needs of the audience before conveying a message? Why is it important? Why is it important? Okay. Let me just go to the, why is it important? It's very easy. The sender's response. Why is it important? Why is it important to convey, to almost like to understand your audience? Because ultimately, to prevent communication barriers. Beautiful. You want, what do you want from your audience? You want positive feedback from your audience. Isn't that so? Okay. You want positive feedback from your audience. So that is so that they can understand and engage with the sender. Beautiful. So those are, so you must, before, you know what, people, this is something that's very important. Sometimes I always explain to you this. Have you ever wondered when people want to come to South Africa and then there's an audience, you know, and then the tickets don't sell? Their tickets don't sell. And they said, yeah, the people of South Africa don't want to support our people. And then I said to them, no, the sender did not understand their audience. If it is an old audience, you understand, if your audience, because I said you must be very clear about your audience. If there's a person like an old guy coming in, I mean, Bruno Mars, let's say Bruno Mars, or Chris, or any of these young artists that came in recently. Why were their shows successful? Why were their shows successful? Their shows were successful because let's say Bruno Mars comes into South Africa. Most of them, you know him. You know what I mean? Or any of these young artists. The sender, the people that's organizing, the sender that's organizing these concerts, okay, they must understand their audience, because if they understand their audience, it means that they're going to send out the correct message. They are going to make sure that if Bruno Mars or whoever comes to South Africa, you know, or one of our local artists, they must understand this audience. You get that? Okay, so they must understand South African audiences. It's going to be people it's going to be young people. You're not going to send a concert of Bruno Mars. You're not going to advertise it on Facebook. You know, Facebook, they say it's for old people. You understand that? So the medium is not going to be Facebook. The medium is going to be Instagram. They're going to use Twitter, not Twitter X. They're going to use like social media companies that they will ensure that if you are going to use Facebook, the young people are not going to see that Bruno Mars or whoever else is coming to South Africa. Okay, Chris Brown's event was successful in South Africa because the senders, the people that send out the advertisements for Chris Brown, knew their audiences. They knew what message must go out there. They knew that the medium that they must use is going to be social media. They knew that they must use codes that's verbal and non-verbal. They knew that the context is going to be mass. They knew if they do all these things correctly, that they are going to get people coming to the Chris Brown concert, and they're going to get positive feedback from these people. Do you understand that? The reason why things fail is because the sender did not take all these things into consideration. That's why things fail. Okay, so even you as a person, so the message must be decoded vividly for the receiver. So even if you write an email to me, for example, you are going to be the sender. I'm the audience. You must be able to send the message to me clearly. As the audience, I'm not supposed to figure out what you are trying to say. You know what I mean? It's like some students will say to me, ma'am, I miss, Natalie, I missed the class the other day. And then I'm looking at them and thinking, what class are you talking about? What does the other day mean? You know, I'm not here to figure it out for you. You as a sender must take responsibility. And even you must take responsibility even when you write an assignment. When you submit your assignments, it's your responsibility, students. You know, you can't say, the markers didn't understand what I was saying. I was trying to say this. No, if it's not on the paper that you have submitted and it's not clear, then you are going to fail. It's not the audience or the markers or the lecturer's responsibility to figure out what you are trying to say. You must be clear in your messaging. If you are not clear, you are going to fail. You understand that? The same thing with any concert. There's been so many failed concerts here, and they do a roundtable discussion, and they say, guys, what went wrong? No, you did not understand your audience. You understand that? You did not send the right message. You did not use the correct medium. You did not use the correct codes. You did not use the correct context, and that is why the audience or the receivers of your message did not come to your event. And that you as a sender must take responsibility for. And that is what communication theory says. Okay? It says that. So let's just go back to another one here. The next question, let me just go back there. Explain the difference between a verbal and a non-verbal code. So a verbal code is what? A difference. It's very easy. Okay. Verbal code is what? What will be a verbal code? It's anything that is. A verbal code is any spoken or written. No. A verbal code is anything that's written only. Okay, so anything that's written, is that clear? Verbal is written. Spoken is, verbal code. Verbal code is written. Non-verbal is a picture that you see. So let's say we have a picture of people. So a picture where there's with no words. Okay, is a non-verbal code. Okay, and then picture with no words is a non-verbal code. Okay, so anything with just words will be a verbal code. Do you get it? Okay, so if you see that, so if you see something, a verbal is in any written communication. So the second, oh, sorry, my bad. No. Thanks, Nomkosi. Look here, guys, in my classes, there's no mistakes. I promise you, we're all learning together. Okay, so I'm not the type of lecturer that's going to say to you, oh, Nkosi, why haven't you let her listen properly? No, I'm the sender. I'm the sender of the message. I want positive feedback from my audience. Do you understand that? So that's the other thing I needed to mention to you guys. Please, I'm not the type that's concerned about, your background or where you come from. People have different situations. In my world, you are all the same. And I will not chastise you for answer. I'm so excited, Nomkosi, that you answer the question. That's the more important thing than anything else. Okay, so I'm really appreciative of it. So let's say you see a stop sign, okay, and there's the word, and the word stop is written on it. So that stop is written on it. So that will be a verbal and nonverbal code. Okay. You understand, because you have the word stop written, stop sign, and the word stop written on it. That will be a verbal and a nonverbal code. Okay. So there we go. Whew. Yeah, this is we're going now, almost done. And then this one is going to be, identify a spoken and a written medium, any spoken medium that you can identify. Okay. Any spoken medium you can identify, and a written medium that you can identify. Spoken. So spoken will be what you hear. Spoken would be what? Voice note. Voice note, isn't that so? Lectures, voice note, lecture that you attend, yes. Okay, written medium will be text, emails, perfectly, Fiwe, lovely. Okay, lectures that you attend. Okay, so you know the difference between spoken. Spoken is with what is being said, and written is what is being written. And then the last one is going to be your, just one more question, and that's going to be your, no, I'm almost done. Wow, the last one. What indicates success in the communication approach? And that is, people, what success in their communication approach is what? Easy one, that is when you get success in the communication approach that I've taught you is when you get what? When you get? Perfectly. Is it Chalum Mango? Oh, I'm butchering your name. You said it perfectly, when there's positive feedback. Okay, so guys, positive feedback, that's it. So now you understand language acquisition, you understand communication theory and how it works, because this applies to everything that you're going to do one day in life. You need to understand as a sender that you are the person that must understand your audience. And please don't tell me the audience is everyone. No. My audience today is ENG1501. Just now when I go out of this room, I'm going to speak to my husband. That is going to be a different audience. You understand that? I have twin boys here. When I speak to them or they speak to me, then I have a different audience. You understand that? So your audiences change all the time, but you must be able, if you want success, positive feedback, you must be able to say to yourself, I am the sender. What do I need to consider? I need to consider that my message that I'm sending to these people are clear. I need to make sure that the medium that I'm using, whether it's a written medium or it's a spoken medium, is clear. You know what I mean? I need to understand if I'm going to use codes. Am I going to use written codes? Or, sorry, am I going to use written codes, or I'm going to use non-written codes. Okay, so is it going to be writing or pictures that I'm going to use? I need to make clear that I understand the context, you know, and then I'm finally, if I take all of these things into consideration, I'm going to get positive feedback from my audience. Whew, so that's communication theory for you. Now, that's the ideal of communication. Isn't that so? I mean, if we can just get positive feedback, oh, we will all be happy. Ha! But unfortunately, we live in a society where there are barriers to communication. And that is what I will discuss with you next week, the same time at 5, from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. I was going to do an activity with you tonight. If I send the slides, I'm going to send the activity, but we can do the activity next week. It's our first night, you know, it's our first night. I'm still figuring it out with the other classes as well. So I'm going to stop here, students. It's already 8 minutes past 7, according to my clock. Thank you for those who came in. I mean, it's not, it's enough students for me to be happy with our first lecture. And so I'm praying that you will all slot in every week. These are just support academic literacy modules, but I think it's so important for you guys. Anything that you can get additionally for free is very, very important. So slot in to, you know, come onto Teams next week so that we can start with communication barriers next week, because from comp theory, we're going to move into communication barriers. Okay, Adams, you have a question? Okay, I'm going to try and, okay, you are fine. Thank you, Adams. Thank you. Let me see if I can unmute, allow mic. Yeah, yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, students, for those who have given me responses. Okay, I will definitely see you next week, and hopefully we will not have any of these issues, and the administrator will be back that will be able to assist me. So thank you. Have a lovely evening further and enjoy the rest of the week. Bye-bye.